Hey everyone, Discourse Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. I wanted to address a kind of interesting post that cropped up over in my subreddit recently, with somebody asking whether or not the general quality of discussion on the topic of music has gone downhill, noting the tier list boom as being like a moment where it's sort of like nosedived. And this poster was actually also asking those who might be older to sort of like, dig into their memory banks and actually assess whether or not things were better a decade ago. It's kind of funny to think about the answer to this question, especially within the time framing given in the original post, because 10 years ago at this point was 2015, which in terms of the progression of online musical discourse, you're pretty far into the evolution of that in the modern day at that point. Like, if we really wanted to make a comparative testing ground here, you would have to go back like at least 5 to 6 years earlier than that, which at that point you're talking about the discussion happening on music forums, on Japanese image boards, my YouTube channel starting in 2009, the blogosphere boom, Pitchfork being much more relevant at the time than it is today. We're also talking about a time where generally less people were on the internet too, or at least weren't on it quite as often because we didn't have the internet in our friggin' pockets all the time. Also, streaming hadn't quite become the industry game-changing business model that it would eventually become too. It was a completely different paradigm for music discussion and consumption, with a lot of mainstream discourse and consumption still being relegated to traditional media and stuff like that. A lot of the music engagement that was happening in these sort of like small communities online, be it on a 4chan or a Reddit or a random message board somewhere, or a blog or a small up-and-coming music review site, the discourse generally was more interesting. The music curation tended to be a bit more adventurous too, because generally speaking, the communities around all of this stuff were much smaller, much more manageable and localized. The people who were there engaging in the topic were really truly the heads and the most passionate and the people who've obsessed over this stuff the most. However, I was there, and I'm not trying to paint this moment in time as this perfect slice of history when it comes to music discussion and consumption. These forums and communities, in my opinion, had their limitations too, tended to sometimes be very toxic, very aggressive, very dismissive, very elitist. The range of taste and albums and artists discussed sometimes could be kind of limited, with a lot of meme-based discourse around certain projects. I can't tell you how many times I've seen neutral milk hotels in the airplane over the sea posted over and over and over and over and over. I mean, look, if at the time I thought all of these platforms and general music discourse during this point in history were totally and completely perfect and fine and a-okay, that it couldn't be improved upon in any way whatsoever, I wouldn't have started my YouTube channel. I would have just been no, this is good. We don't need anything else other than this. Because also at that time, I found some of the hype cycles that were being endorsed and engaged in during this period to be kind of boring. I thought that there were a lot of great artists and albums and sounds that were out there that were worth engaging with that were being overlooked. I thought that a lot of music discourse and reviews and analysis tended to be kind of one-sided and very top-down. It didn't feel very reciprocal. It didn't feel very communal. And when it came to a lot of the indie stuff that was popular at the time, there was a very incestuous relationship going on between the very small amount of relevant labels that were pushing some of the biggest artists on the indie circuit at the time, the even smaller amount of PR groups that would sort of help promote these artists and push their MP3s out there and give them hype. The blogs and music websites like Pitchfork, that they would sort of disseminate that stuff too. It was very cliquey, very cool kids club, and personally, I didn't really care for it. So yeah, this time period certainly had its upsides, but it wasn't perfect by any means. And look, some aspects of music discourse online have improved since then, but there have been some, I guess, things that have backslid a bit too, especially when you fast forward from there to now. I mean, I could see why the original poster here would see this period of time, like 2015, as a bit of a grace period in a way, because around this time, it sort of sucks that we've seen the degradation financially and culturally of all of these once great and influential institutions in music reviews and coverage, be it Pitchfork, be it Rolling Stone, so on and so forth. I know that there's a lot of people like that don't really like decry the fact that these websites and platforms, they're not as popular as they once were. They're not cool anymore. They're not putting on the artists that we like anymore. Why does it matter? I'm not interested. They're working with a format that isn't interesting at this point, which, like, okay, you can make those points if you want. However, these places were once huge institutions that, when you dig through their archives, are essentially like, historical ledgers of art and culture, and frankly helped cover and popularize a lot of really cool, relevant stuff, the influence of which is still significant and felt today in a lot of the modern music that we hear. And the articles and coverage of these platforms give us like a really cool insight into what things were sort of received like around this time. And it's really sad, unfortunately, to see these places slowly become kind of hollowed out and left to die, especially in an age where it is very, very, very difficult to have an informed discussion on anything on social media right now. It's just hot takes, quick, aggro, in-your-face reactions, trying to get dunks. And for sure, around 2015, there was kind of this like grace period of, these bigger platforms kind of going downhill, more music discussions kind of going onto social media, and platforms like Twitter and Reddit not being so trash, not being so chock full of bots as they are now, with there still being some music websites and blogs of note operating that were doing good stuff. Algorithms weren't quite homogenizing everyone's taste at this point yet. Playlists weren't so goddamn loaded with AI bullshit. Again, this time period of music discourse on the internet was definitely more manageable, and I think there was like some good stuff coming out of this in terms of like artists that were worth championing and being excited about, both in the underground and the mainstream. And look, current day, the music and arts community, for all of its flaws, I still think is putting out good stuff. However, I don't think this post is wrong in assessing that things are not in a great place right now. However, I wouldn't really attribute that to much else other than the fact that the platforms that this discourse is happening on right now at this moment just suck fucking ass. And a lot of the platforms that people discover music through right now suck ass. In terms of like user experience and what you're actually being recommended and exposed to, Spotify is worse than ever, with, again, more limited algorithmic recommendations, blander playlists loaded with fake music, the algorithms getting more aggressive in terms of like herding people into certain songs and trends and singles and so on and so forth. Any given social media platform where there's a decent amount of music discourse going on at any given moment are objectively worse too, in terms of, again, dealing with spam, dealing with crap, dealing with bots, dealing with comment sections that are engineered to basically show you the dumbest and most offensive and most controversial content and comments first, basically erasing any chance of like a thoughtful discussion or analysis of anything happening, as you're pretty much guaranteed to not be seen by anyone once you start trying to do that. Like, none of these platforms are designed to foster or create community around anything now. And as a result, it's more difficult for us to be able to communally have any kind of genuine discussion or understanding about where we are right now culturally and artistically. And to the degree that is happening, a lot of that takes form and shape of these very cult-like fandoms that are super polarizing and aggressive when it comes to dealing with people who are a part of other fandoms. Like, we have to be in like this tribal war state at all times. It's enough to make you not want to talk about music online at all. And again, that's the thing. Every social media platform that you use is so heavily programmed right now, it's essentially like a TV station in its own way in terms of what's being decided to be shown to you at any given moment. It's very planned, it's very predetermined, it's no longer this cool, innocent, organic thing, even though it may seem that way because you're not seeing the invisible algorithm hand throwing in front of your face what it throws in front of it. And more often than not, the algorithm is deciding what to show you based on whether or not it's going to get some kind of rise out of you, not whether it'll inform you or improve your life in some significant way. And there's more I could say, but I feel like that is kind of, at least from my perspective, a general assessment of where kind of things are at when it comes to music discourse right now. It's not great, but I attribute most of that to the platforms it's happening on, not the people who are doing it. And I feel like if people want to get back to that, they need to start exploring platforms or building places to do that sort of thing, where it can just be a little bit more organic, not so heavily controlled or botted or whittled down to the most dumb and baseline and aggressive aspects of it. Like, regardless of where music discourse is happening, those elements are always going to be there, but it really needs to be like balanced. Now, look, that's not to say that there aren't like bright spots in the music discourse world now, that there aren't, still websites like Stereogum doing their thing. There aren't community-based review platforms that are most definitely worthy of respect, like Rate Your Music and Sputnik and Album of the Year. Music discourse isn't currently in such a bad place that it's all terrible and it's all awful and it's all garbage. But in my opinion, a great deal of it is kind of being taken up and ruined by the social media platforms where nothing good is happening. And if it's to ever get back into a place where it's in a much healthier state, I think a lot of actual, passionate, genuine music fans maybe need to start building and creating another place to do this sort of thing. Seek out alternatives where a majority of the conversation isn't just simply like, fighting with each other over chart positions and other random bullshit. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on all that. Let me know in the comments what yours are. I'm sure you will. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, music, discourse, forever.